Hello, welcome to the second episode of That Startup Guy, the podcast where we talk about startups and general business, mainly for students who are interested in business or plan to do their own startup. This is our second episode where we would like to introduce you to Mr. Adharsh Gajendran, pass out of VIT Batch 21 and founder and CEO of Wi-Fi Tech. Wi-Fi Tech makes products based on VR and helps disabled kids develop their mind. We have divided this podcast into two parts. The first part, which we'll see right now, is basically talking about his life in VIT and how, as a student, he chased his dream of building a startup. On this second episode of That Startup Guy, we have Mr. Adarsh Gajendran, the founder of Wifer, which is situated in VIT Vellore. So let's learn from him how did he build this startup and how was his time in VIT Vellore as a student. So hello sir. So how have you been like? How do you manage your time right now? How did you come up
So,
with this?
I mean, as a typical VIT student, right, as an alumni of VIT, it just comes naturally, you can say, being able to jump between so many different things. So it doesn't really seem like much of a challenge.
So like in 2021, I guess you passed out of VIT Vellore
Mm.
from CSE. So and you also worked in different fields and mainly in game development.
Mm.
So how did the idea of developing a game come to you?
Yeah, so I'll have to take you a little bit back in time, right? So from when I was a very young kid, I'd always been a bit creative with things, be it storytelling or art and whatnot. And so as studies started to take much more serious focus in life, computer science seemed to be something that came into my. And so while all of this was happening, when we did enter college, everyone tries out different domains and stuff, right? Be it data science, AI, ML, it's like the orders are different. People try. I did all of that, and one fine evening, all our roommates and our neighbors sort of gathered together and were like, why don't we make a game? So we did start all enthusiastic, and obviously, as all things go, everyone left to do other things. And that's when it struck me that game development was like the perfect intersection between the creative side of me as well as the coding or computer side of me, right? So it just happened to be my lucky thing, and it started out like that.
So you also discovered that you are good at coding
Mm.
along with your creative side. So when did coding enter to your life? That okay, you are actually good at coding because there are 4,000 students out there doing coding, but actually 1% of which are really passionate about coding.
So, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm passionate about, I mean, at least at this point, I'm not passionate about coding given the things that you have to look at. But when I did started, it seemed nice to be able to interact with the machines that just does things, right? So, I feel like everything in a way can be interacted with, can be spoken to, right? So you do something and it acts. So you push a door, it opens. You tap a switch, it gets switched, the light gets switched on and whatnot. So similarly, computers just work mysteriously for me as a child. So because you hit a few keys and it works. So that curiosity had always been there, right? And finally be able to speak the language that computers understand was something fascinating. To be able to say, hey, do this, do this, do this. If this happens, keep doing this for a while. So things like that really fascinated me, right? So I think that's the fascination that everyone gets when they start. But because the learning curve is a bit too steep, people get frustrated and quit. So that I just stuck through it. Yeah.
And in your college life, how have you been like a student? Like, were you studious? Were you also mischievous? How was your personality apart from being just a coder with your
So
friends?
I'd say this, right? Uh, so in 12th, by the end of it, CBSE sort of makes you feel like you're the best in the world. You've got good marks, how much ever you get. And so right after that, I think even um, the last exam was math or science. I'm not sure. Right after that, the next day was VIT Triple E. I was exhausted, but I was still confident with the knowledge I had. But I forgotten everything about JEE Triple E content, right? So went and flopped heavily and came back. So I knew that uh, this was just something that I should do to get through. And even then with some leftover confidence, I was like, let's do this. I'm awesome. I'll come in. I'll make my parents proud. Because I think even in the orientation, they get you to that feeling, right? That you will make your parents proud. You will do great things. So like, let's go. That's when I realized that VIT is a sea filled with school head boys, cult sex, and toppers, and international rankers, and exchange students and stuff. So I was caught up in a sea of that, right? And before 12th, even though I could study good, I was always in the average. So here it was very evident, right, that I was mid. So, which I feel is like worse than being a backbencher, because then you have a title. People do recognize you, thinking, yeah, if the teacher asks the question, that's the guy that will get caught. So I wouldn't even get a chance, right? So I was very average. So if I were to be, as YouTube comments say, if I were to be a soda, I would be water, right? That's how mid I was. And so from that, to be able to identify that, yeah, maybe becoming very studious isn't my thing. Maybe if I have skills, maybe I don't have to do this, right? So that was the turning point. It sort of just flipped a switch, and I knew that day that this is the direction that I have to go to. And college, like, even though we are inside and you guys are still studying, there will be a point when you sort of understand that you can skill up even without the help of going to classes. Even though classes are good for discussion and deeper understanding, once you get like a base realization that, yeah, skilling up is not so hard, you just switch sides here. So that's what happened to me, right? So I was that.
Yeah, so I think this analogy happens with many of us, that okay, we come from our hometowns. We feel that okay, we are the best. I am the best person ever. I am really smart. And when we come to VIT, we see okay, there are many fishes out there who are much bigger than us, and the ego just melts down.
There was this incident actually when you were telling me this, right? First year, same thing. So I was like, coding everything I know. What else is that? So I know Python, I know C, C++. What else do I know? So there's this pre-club registration thing that usually happens, right? Where all the clubs and chapters put up a stall where you can go and interact. So I went to Google Developers Society. Then it was just GDG, I think. So I went to them. I was like, I know coding. What do you know? So I had to take a note. I was like, see, I know file handling, I know error handling, I know everything else. I know loops. I could see the like disappointment, right? They were controlling their laughter, but they were still like, what do we even tell this guy? Right? So that's I could see that, and that was like a just dragged down to reality, which is exactly what I guess you're also referring to, right? Yeah.
So also that happens. Then again, then in the college life, when we enter the college, this ego melts down first. Then we are going through our first examination, and I think the first examination is the real mirror. That okay, not only you are not good at anything, there are people also far away from you, but also you are dumb because you score really less, and there are people who are still in that JE mode right now, that in the first semester they just want to crack, so they will also get the good marks. So apart from that, you found out okay, you are good at coding, you want to upskill that, and after everything, how did you go about it? Like, how did you find that okay, in coding I will do this part? I will, how did you get your first internship, or how did you also figure out the path after figuring out that okay, you are good at coding and you chose to pursue it?
Right. So this especially was more evident when it came to game development, when I had to do it. So before then, I think at the end of first year, you don't really know how to acquire a skill and actually use it, right? Portions, exams, that's how it starts. So I spent about 2 months learning to make a basic game that would take maybe half an hour or 1 hour to even for an intern. So this was because it was the holidays after the first year. So I knew I wanted to learn. Also, I was part of this other chapter than CSE chapter. So during that period, I was learning again. I was giving data science one last chance, and I knew I had to learn game development because it seemed pretty interesting. I just knew that I had to learn. So I first did a very wrong thing. Just went through C sharp coding lessons, and wasted about 2-3 weeks up. And then finally I was like, hey, it really doesn't seem like I'm going anywhere. Let's see what YouTube tells me, because that was when it was starting to rise up, people YouTubing stuff, right? So I just went there and said Unity game development tutorial, beginner. So I got exposed to this one great YouTuber that any game developer would know. He's called Brakis. So there's this one tutorial that everyone faces when they're starting out. So that was my introduction point as well. So that took me about a month, because I was still switching. I was still trying to learn things by applying first. So that's what happened. And then I realized that coding, though, you only have to apply and develop. Because the first year also went in waste, because I was trying out competitive coding and optimizing and all of that, bit manipulation and all of that. And then I realized this is what I wanted to do. Went full into project mode. So after a couple of projects, I did see a mail. First, it was graphic design actually. So graphic design was just something that I knew because of the creative side, right? I'd always wanted to do something with Photoshop, Illustrator. I'd always been doing something with stuff. So it just seemed something that I could do. Luckily, happened to be getting spammed by internship mails at that point. I like, okay, it seems interesting. Let's try it out. Luckily, I got through, because I'm not sure what they saw, but probably because holidays may who would spend learning stuff, like at least at that point. Now everyone's doing something or the other. So I think that gave me the edge, because this paradox, right, or this indestructible loop apparently, where you need experience to get a job to experience. So the proper way to go to it is make your own project. So that's what I did.
So I feel that make your own project or the first internship is really important, because I think the first internship, the first boss really decides the path, how you experience things, how you look at things. Because from my personal experience in VIT, my first boss was Surya. I did internship under him. Now,
Right.
if I am making my podcast, he's giving me connections. He's helping me with it. So I guess it was really like my fate that I met him, and I also learned from him. So I think the first internship has to be tough. Like you
Yeah.
have to go through it. But if you get through it, the second one you will get
would
it.
be a little easier.
Yeah. So after doing all these internships, and how did you figure out that, like, after your BTech, did you also land on a job?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So tell about it. Like, what were you doing, and how much time did you do?
So during my second year, third year, I was fully into freelancing and internships. And third year, because of few connections that I had in my first year, I became a design head of this one club that was just getting started then. So while all of this was happening, I now that I look back, I can't believe that I was able to do that many things. So right when that happened, COVID struck, and so it sort of broke all the flow, right? Because I think if things didn't go that way, the path would have been slightly different, or maybe this would have happened earlier, or this would have happened in a different way. But this happened, and so for me, all hope was lost. I was just like, let's just get a job for now. While also I was still interning, because like I said, I knew that the path that I was taking was slightly different. I was still going with it. I was still doing an internship throughout 2020. So while also getting placed first at a dream company, and then I got a super dream internship, which was what I actually wanted. So which was this game development company in Hyderabad. So I got placed with them, and before or during the placement time itself, I knew that this idea that I had to be tried out, had to be given time. And so I wanted those 6 months of internship, because I could do one of two things, right? I could get into a job, become comfortable, because the numbers were high, and the path was upwards. So I could have gone that way, or I had to take the dive after 6 months. So 6 months was very comfortable for a student coming out of COVID, especially. Um, Being independent in a new city, earning your own money, it was very comfortable. But then I decided to take the jump, and that's when I came to Wi-Fi. Yeah.
So again, after this, I have one analogy which I would like to cross check with you.
Please go on.
That in my this very small time of observation, like 6 months I have been to VIT, I have observed that many first year students are really in hurry to find okay what I want to do, including myself. I was in hurry that okay what will happen because my marks are also average. There are many people who are scoring more. I also don't have any skill. As we said, ego melts down. Right. So now I don't have a skill. My marks are average. What will I do? Will I waste my father's money? So, and again, after talking to people, I got to know that okay, give yourself 2 years. Like first year is that you get accustomed with the environment. You get to know okay, now I'm nothing. The second year is where you start to explore, and third and fourth year is where you start to execute.
Yeah.
So, do you agree with it, or what do you think about it?
So I think if you're a kid that hasn't been outside home until 12th, first year would just go in getting sick, becoming all right. It's a loop, and as you said, getting accustomed to the environment. But I feel like first year you can do all sorts of stupid mistakes. You can get an internship, try your best, give it your all. If it fails, it fails. Or freelance, right? Approach all of it. But as you said, taking it slow and sort of understanding that it's not going anywhere is very crucial actually. So that again dawned after COVID only for me. So third year, because I was at the peak, I think the one thing that was driving me was if not now when. So third year is a bit too late, but even then I think the run rate sort of averages out for me. I did quite well, but even then I felt like or right after COVID happened, I was like, hey, what was I even doing? I was doing these many things. I couldn't get enough sleep, even though my name would be on a few things. That's it, right? I wouldn't have actually done something that is going to stick forever. So at this point, I only remember half the things that I did there. So it's really important to take your time to value each of these things, because even people who planned 5-10 years down the line previously, after COVID struck, realized that anything can go awry. So if that's the case with those people, I can only imagine what the situation is with guys like you, right, who is just starting out. So it's all right. You should have a short-term plan, but it's also very important to pace yourself, because even people at my age, or 2 years after getting out of college, right? It's a very weird period where you see people getting placed just now, or people doing things like what I'm doing, or just folks roaming around or going abroad. All of these are different meters, and then there are those people that are getting married, right? So I even had a shock last week that one of my closer friends was getting married. So it's a very weird age, and that's when you realize that you still have about 45-50 years to live. So if that's the case, these 3-4 years aren't even going to be remembered. But even though they do lay the founding stone for whatever you'll be doing, so are the years after college. So even now, if God forbid everything goes to just crumbles to ground, right? I can still do things. I can still start from scratch, try something totally different. I can start some pani puri shop, maybe, build an empire that way. So anyone can do that, right? So it's very important to pace yourself that way.
So you should not forget to experiment, basically.
Yeah,
Like
try all
it's
these different
college
things.
time, you have 45-50 years to
Yeah.
live. These are just 4 years. So you should just do the stupid shit.
See, yeah. So one person I knew who was a day scholar, while college, brilliant kid, got into selling glasses in Titan eye showroom just because he wanted to understand how things happen there. So even though he doesn't realize, or maybe he does now, it's a very valuable skill to be able to sell, to be able to interact with customers, right? But people usually wouldn't do that because they're like, hey, but I'm not going to do that for the rest of my life. I'm going to do coding. I'm going to build so many empires. I'm going to become the richest person, whatnot, right? So, but it's important to do all these weird different things. So, one movie in that regard is watching Forrest Gump, right? Do take your time to have a look at it, because you'll understand that you can still do all these stupid things and still end up pretty well off in life.
So like these things add up to a soft skill that okay, now working at a Titan shop maybe is not as much as glamorous.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you learn selling.
Yeah.
And maybe it's important to a skill that 45, 50 years you are living, you know the skill
Yeah.
of selling, which your colleagues won't learn.
Yeah, so even that, it's mostly in the line of what you, with regard to what you'll be doing in the future, right? When it compares to whatever you're doing in the present, not something is lesser or more, but it's just if you're gonna sell, if you're gonna stay in selling, that's something that you can try. If you're gonna become the Titan CEO or manager or regional manager, that's a trajectory. I was just saying that if your life's gonna be different, that's irrelevant. Yeah.
So that's it for the first part of this podcast with Mr. Adarsh. I hope you like the episode. We'll be releasing our second part soon. Make sure you follow us for more further updates. And this podcast was created by Rohak Mansukhani and Shri Baldev.